The story of Cristiano Ronaldo and Georgina Rodríguez was never a simple love story. It was a story lived under the harshest lights, in the loudest arenas, among millions of eyes waiting to judge, praise, attack, or adore them. Ronaldo was a man carved from ambition, discipline, and destiny. Georgina was a woman shaped by survival, by dreams she wasn't supposed to reach, by a world she entered through accident and magic. Together, they weren't just a couple. They were a global phenomenon. And yet, behind that glamour lived a promise the world never understood fully. A promise tied not to love, not to timing, but to fate itself. If Portugal wins the World Cup, we'll get married. It sounded like a fairy tale when fans first heard it. Something playful, something symbolic. But for Georgina, it became a question that echoed for years. Why did the man she loved tie their future to something as fragile as a tournament? Why did marriage depend on victory? At first, she brushed it aside. She knew Cristiano's heart, knew how obsessed he was with greatness. She believed he said it lightly. But as time passed and the world repeated those words endlessly, the weight of that promise grew heavier. She began to wonder if she was waiting for something that might never come. Cristiano didn't realize how deeply those words had settled into her heart. He was too focused on the ticking clock of his career, on proving he could stay on top even as age crept up behind him. Football demands everything: your body, your mind, your emotions, your nights, your mornings, your soul. So much so that sometimes you forget the people watching you from the sidelines, the ones who lose sleep when you lose, who break when you break. Georgina had watched him collapse under pressure so many times, and each time she picked up the pieces quietly, without expectation. Then came the World Cup of 2022, the one Ronaldo believed would change his fate. He trained like a warrior preparing for his final battle. He pushed his body harder than ever. He told himself this was it. This was where destiny would surrender. And in the middle of that fire, Georgina stood silently behind him, praying for him, hoping for him, not only for victory but for the moment after victory, the moment he had promised her long ago, the moment their love would be sealed forever. But destiny had its own plans. The world saw Cristiano struggle in ways they had never imagined. They saw a legend benched, criticized, doubted, mocked. They saw tears roll down his face as he walked off the field, knowing the title he had dreamed of since childhood had slipped through his fingers for the last time. That night, in his hotel room, the weight of the world collapsed on him. Cameras weren't there to capture how broken he was. But Georgina was. She didn't mention the promise. She didn't talk about the wedding. She simply held him, letting him cry, letting him break, in her arms where he didn't need to be strong. After that World Cup, something changed. Not in the world. Not in football. But inside Cristiano. The silence that followed the tournament was the longest of his career. Journalists speculated he might retire. Critics said he was finished. Fans prayed he'd return stronger. But Georgina, she simply waited. Not for the World Cup anymore. Not for a miracle. She waited for him. As months turned into years, life began moving again. Cristiano joined Al Nassr, started scoring again, started smiling again. Their family grew stronger. Their children became the center of their universe. And yet, the one question nobody dared to ask still lived between them. When? When would the wedding finally happen? Was the promise still alive? Or had it died quietly the night Portugal lost? Then one evening, when the sun was setting in Riyadh, Cristiano took Georgina for a walk in their private garden, a place untouched by paparazzi, untouched by noise. The sky was warm, the air peaceful. For once, there were no cameras, no crowds, no stadiums. Just the two of them. And in that quiet moment, Cristiano held her hand and said something she never expected to hear. "I made you wait too long." Georgina felt her chest tighten. For years, she had swallowed her doubts, her fears, her disappointments. She had convinced herself that maybe he wasn't ready. Maybe he never would be. But now, his voice was soft, sincere, stripped of ego. He wasn't speaking as Cristiano Ronaldo the legend. He was speaking as Cristiano, her partner. And then, from his pocket, he pulled out a ring. Not the biggest diamond in the world, not the most extravagant stone money could buy, but a ring he chose for her alone. A ring that carried meaning, not price. When she saw it, tears welled in her eyes. Not because of the ring, but because, for the first time in years, the promise wasn't tied to a trophy. It wasn't tied to winning. It wasn't tied to proving anything to the world. It was tied only to love. The world learned about the engagement through a single photo posted by Georgina. A simple caption. A dazzling ring. A quiet smile. It should have been a moment of joy. But as always, drama followed them like a shadow. People questioned the ring. They questioned the timing. They questioned why Cristiano didn't post first. Social media split into two worlds, one celebrating, one criticizing. That is the price of fame. Even love becomes public property. But behind closed doors, their lives were moving in ways the world couldn't see. The children were ecstatic, planning imaginary weddings in the living room. Ronaldo's mother cried in silence, remembering how proud his father would have been to see this day. And Georgina, for the first time in a long time, slept peacefully, because the doubt that haunted her was finally gone. The night ended with a quiet embrace, a moment of reflection, and the understanding that the story was only beginning. The engagement had happened, but the real journey, the private wedding, the drama of secrecy, the moments nobody else would see, was still ahead. And in that silence, in that anticipation, they both knew that their love, tested by years, by fame, by public scrutiny, and by personal loss, was finally about to be sealed in a way that only the two of them would ever truly understand. The engagement was no longer a secret, but the wedding remained a mystery. Rumors flew across social media like wildfire, fueled by paparazzi snapshots, blurry images, and speculation. Some claimed Cristiano and Georgina had already tied the knot in a private ceremony. Others insisted that the wedding was being delayed intentionally, that it was a public relations strategy to keep the fans and media intrigued. And yet, the truth was far more intimate and hidden. The couple had chosen to protect their love from the glare of the world, to create a moment that belonged solely to them, their children, and the fragile sanctity of their family. Every step, every choice, every detail was deliberate, calculated not for headlines, but for memories they would carry in their hearts forever. Preparations began quietly, away from public attention. Invitations were whispered to close family and friends, locations were kept secret, and schedules were carefully curated to avoid leaks. Cristiano, who had commanded stadiums filled with tens of thousands of fans, now focused on details no one would ever notice. The flowers, the children's tiny outfits, the way Georgina's favorite song would play when she walked down the aisle. For him, it wasn't about perfection or grandeur. It was about creating a moment that encapsulated years of love, struggle, sacrifice, and resilience. And Georgina, who had endured judgment and scrutiny from day one, finally felt free to laugh, to cry, to plan her dream day without anyone else's expectations looming over her. The night before the wedding, they walked through their private villa, hand in hand, observing the quiet chaos of preparations. The children were asleep, dreaming of the future in their innocent, unburdened ways. Georgina looked at Cristiano, her eyes reflecting both excitement and relief. She whispered softly, "After everything, this feels like a fairy tale." Cristiano smiled, a mixture of nerves and happiness, and replied, "It's real. We made it real." They had survived the doubts, the rumors, the pressures, and the heartbreaks, and now finally, the world's greatest footballer could simply be a man in love, not a legend on a pitch. The wedding day itself was surreal, not because of extravagant decoration or celebrity attendance, but because of the depth of emotion that pervaded every corner of the ceremony. Georgina appeared radiant, her eyes shining with tears she didn't hide, her smile unrestrained. Cristiano stood at the altar, not with a stoic expression or controlled composure, but with raw emotion, his chest heavy with years of anticipation, relief, and love. As Georgina approached him, every step felt monumental. The years of waiting, the years of promises tied to destiny, the nights of fear, the moments of hope, condensed into this single passage of time. And when their hands finally joined, it wasn't merely a gesture. It was the culmination of an epic love story, tested by life, refined by endurance, and immortalized by choice. Yet, the drama didn't end there. The public's fascination with every detail fueled tension outside the wedding. Paparazzi waited at distant corners, fans speculated feverishly online, and journalists debated endlessly on live TV. Critics argued about the privacy, the timing, and the narrative itself, claiming it was orchestrated for attention. But behind the polished photos and whispered stories, Cristiano and Georgina knew the truth. This day was theirs, and nobody else's opinion could taint it. The world could speculate, but the heart knew. And in their private moments, the laughter, the stolen glances, the quiet words of love exchanged in empty hallways created memories stronger than any headline or viral post. The ceremony was intimate, with only those closest to them present. The children played their roles, some perfectly, some clumsily, each moment capturing authenticity the world never saw. When vows were exchanged, Cristiano spoke not as a celebrity or a legend, but as a man who had learned the fragility of life and the strength of love. He promised protection, loyalty, understanding, and presence, not grandiose gestures, not wealth, not fame. Georgina's voice trembled with sincerity as she promised the same, binding herself to a man who had lived publicly yet loved privately, whose heart was finally at peace in hers. As the evening descended into quiet celebration, the couple took a moment alone, overlooking a garden lit by subtle lanterns. The children slept, the laughter faded, and the noise of the outside world seemed miles away. Cristiano turned to Georgina, holding her hand, and whispered, "We finally did it. Not for anyone else, just us." She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder, and replied, "And this is only the beginning. The world can watch, but they will never know how real this is for us." And in that serene silence, they both understood that their love had survived the impossible: fame, rumors, loss, pressure, and years of waiting. It was no longer about promises, trophies, or speculation. It was about them, a family, and the moments that belonged only to them. The story of Cristiano Ronaldo and Georgina Rodríguez, often misinterpreted, oversimplified, and sensationalized, found its true climax not in headlines, not in viral photos, and not in critics' opinions, but in the simple, profound reality that two people chose each other above everything else. The world could speculate endlessly about wealth, fame, or whether the ring was big enough, whether the wedding was perfect, or whether secrecy was necessary. But the ultimate truth lay in the private moments, in the shared smiles, in the understanding glances, and in the quiet yet powerful declaration of love that transcended everything else. For once, the legend wasn't about Cristiano Ronaldo on the field. It was about Cristiano Ronaldo in love, finally free to exist beyond the stadiums, beyond the pressures, and beyond the world's endless gaze. And Georgina, steadfast, courageous, and endlessly devoted, finally stood beside him as an equal partner in a story that was theirs, and theirs alone. In the days that followed, photos were released, fans rejoiced, media speculated, but the couple remained calm. They had faced scrutiny, adversity, and doubt. Now, they faced the world together as a family, with hearts full, burdens lightened, and love solidified in a way that only time, patience, and commitment could achieve. And somewhere in the quiet moments, away from every camera and every headline, Cristiano looked at Georgina and said the words he had never said publicly before: "You were worth every second of waiting, every challenge, every criticism. You are my everything." And in that moment, the world could only watch, but never truly know, the depth of a love story that had defied fate itself.